from a different story. We'll start that right now. In the King James Version, the book of Acts, chapter 7, there's a person by the name of Stephen, you call him Saint Stephen, who was stoned to death supposedly for saying blasphemy. If you read, I've read this this chapter in English, and you can see that I have notes on this. There are at least 25 to 30 errors in this chapter, glaring errors. Maybe more. People who are sharper will probably find 100 glaring errors in St. Stephen's speech before the Sanhedrin. What I was told by one of your believers is that St. Stephen was going to be executed, and he was trying, in his being so emotionally aroused, inadvertently he was going to make some mistakes. But so many mistakes that defy any kind of scholarship. I'll give you, for instance, it says in chapter 7, verse 4, that Abraham came out of the lands of the Chaldeans and dwelt in Haran. And when his father was dead, he removed himself to the land of Canaan. Now, that's not true. Any child who studies the Torah knows that Abraham left Haran before his father died. Any child who studies in a yeshiva, who knows Rashi commentary, knows that Abraham came to the land of Canaan before his father died, by at least 60 years. It says that his father, Terach, was 70 when he begat Abraham, Haran and Nachor. Abraham apparently was the oldest. So some people want to say he wasn't the oldest, but how much younger was he? Could have been too much. Terach was 70 when he bore children. And Abraham is mentioned first. We have no reason to assume that Abraham wasn't the first child. Abraham was 75 when he enters the land of Canaan. If Terach had Abraham 75 years before his death, that would make him 130 years old when his wife bore him Abraham. So when Abraham has a son at age 100, what's the big deal? Why is Abraham wondering how that's possible to have a child at age 100 when his own father had him at 130, according to the Christian scholars? But there's no evidence of that. The evidence points to Abraham being the oldest of the children. There's scriptural evidence for that, by the way. If that's the case, then Abraham was 135 when Terach dies. Which means 60 years prior to Terach's death, Abraham already left for the land of Canaan. Here it says, after he died. That's clearly wrong. There are many other mistakes there, but this is something that's clearly incorrect. Furthermore, in verse 16, it says the following: Jacob went down to Egypt and died, he and our fathers. That means all the 12 tribes. Verse 16, and they were carried over to Shechem and laid in the sepulchre that Abraham bought for a sum of money from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. How many errors exist over here? Abraham did not buy the place of Shechem from Hamor or the sons of Hamor. Jacob did. Jacob did not buy a sepulchre. He did not buy a burial plot from Hamor or his sons. He bought a place for his tent. Jacob is not buried in the city of Shechem. The only one that was buried in the city of Shechem was Joseph. The Bible says so. Only Joseph was buried there. According to St. Stephen, Jacob and the patriarchs and all the tribes were buried in Shechem. How could you make such a terrible error? Everybody knows that the tomb of the patriarchs is in Hebron. I mean, anybody who knows anything about politics, knows anything about Israel. That's the tomb of the patriarchs. St. Stephen lived 1900 plus years ago, almost 2,000 years ago. How does he not know this? I'll tell you how he doesn't know this. And from that you can understand why the genealogies are all messed up and why Jesus is quoted as saying that that which comes into your mouth does not defile you. The people who wrote the Gospels were essentially ignorant people, ignorant of the Torah. Or, another possibility, they wanted deliberately to change the rules so that those rules would be palatable to the masses at large. So they had to get rid of the kashrut laws. They had to get rid of the ritual laws. The ritual laws were very difficult to keep. If you have to wash your hands before you eat, that makes it kind of difficult. You have to be near water. You have to limit what you're going to eat. You can't eat bread because that's what you have to wash your hands for. And so people who kept the ritual laws could not go into the jungle or the forest or the desert for days on end because there's no place to wash. You're not going to wash with precious water your hands so you can eat a piece of bread. I mean, most people won't. That limited people from becoming hunters or soldiers of fortune. You had to be near a yeshiv, a settled area, so you could have some water to wash your hands with. If you kept the dietary laws, again, very restrictive. So, the reason why Jesus is quoted as poo-pooing the ritual laws of washing the hands and the dietary laws, even though it's clearly in the Torah, and clearly it's a lie, is so that Judaism becomes palatable to the masses. You don't have to do all this stuff, just believe in Jesus. It's cheap, it's simple, but it's false. It's not true Torah. And that's why people like me, you're never going to convince us that this is even a semblance of truth. There is some truths there. But the truths that are there in the Gospels all come from the Bible, or come from the teachers who were contemporaneous with Jesus and his disciples. Golden Rule was promoted by Hillel. Loving all creatures, loving all people, was something that Hillel promoted among the masses. To be a lover of peace, pursuing peace, loving all of God's creatures and bringing them close to the Torah, that was the maxim of Hillel.